You may be aware that your calf muscles flex your ankle and curl your toes, allowing for running, walking, jumping, and biking. But did you know that this bulbous muscle group of your lower leg is vital to your circulatory system? Today we're discussing the second heart, more commonly known as the calf muscle, on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Now, believe it or not, there are 7 muscles arranged in the superficial group alone of the calf muscle. In the deep group, which do quite a few other things that involve in that area, you've got 4 different muscles involved in that one. But the calf group is more complex than you might think. But the ones I want to focus on today are the ones we are mostly concerned with, unless we have a particular problem. That is, of course, the gastrocnemius and the soleus. But also, I'm going to tell you a neat trait of the calf muscle that you may not know. That's how the calf muscles assist the heart in circulating blood throughout the body. Let's break it down to those 2 major muscles. The gastrocnemius. The gastroc extends from the femur, which is a thigh bone, down to where it inserts into the Achilles tendon. The gastrocnemius is much larger than the soleus, accounting for nearly all of what we call the visual bulk of the calf anatomy. If you actually look and you look at that big bicep-looking thing on the back of your leg, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing that gastrocnemius. And if you see it on a sprinter or a gymnast or anybody that's on the balls of their feet a lot, you'll see quite pronounced or overly developed calf muscles sometimes in boxers, because the boxer shuffles on the ball of their feet and they're working the calf muscles a lot. What you're seeing there is you're seeing the gastrocnemius, but underneath that is what we call the soleus, and it extends down from the tibia and fibula to where it is attached to the Achilles tendon. It's counterpart of the gastrocnemius, but still extremely important muscle. If you want to get a real feel for this, you can pause this podcast, or if you listen to headphones, then you can stand up against the wall and do this, but you can actually do the runner stretch of the foot against the wall, or the wall stretch, as they say. There's actually 2 versions of the wall stretch, and I think they get identified as being 2 different names or not, but I say go stretch your calves on the wall, and people actually put their foot up on the wall, and some people put their foot behind them. So there's 2 ways of doing it. The foot up on the wall is simply that. You walk up very close to the wall, you place your toe, your heel is on the ground, but your toe is on the wall. And so it's like you're setting your foot up in a position to press a gas pedal. Just by bringing that toe up and putting it up on the wall, you're going to feel the stretch in that, especially in that gastrocnemius. You're going to feel it stretching. The other wall stretch is to act like you're trying to push the wall over. You lean forward, put your hands against the wall, put your one leg more or less under center body, and the other leg behind you on the ball of your foot, and you're actually trying to push your heel. That's the other wall calf stretch. Now, both of those, you're feeling when you're doing that exercise, especially and your leg is straight, you're actually feeling the gastrocnemius. That's the more common large calf muscle, and you're feeling it whenever your leg is straight. But if you were to bend your knee just slightly, either in the wall stretch with your toe up on the wall and your heel on the floor, or with your foot behind you. Now, this is a little hard to do when your foot's behind you. You can do it. You can bend the knee and then try to keep your knee bent, but force the heel to the floor. Now, when your foot is up against the wall, simple. Placing your ball, your foot stays against the wall, your heel is on the floor, and all you do is bend the knee a little bit and lean forward. When you do that, you'll feel a transfer. You'll feel the stress transfer and go more underneath that gastroc and also on the sides. You'll feel it on the sides a lot. Now, that is your soleus. That's the other muscle that you don't see, but is extremely important when it comes to the calf muscle and actually activating the foot. Now, the interesting thing about calf muscles, they're like your abdominals. Actually, they're like your abdominals, your forearm, your heart, and your neck. And they are mostly comprised of slow twitch muscles. They're what I always called a dense muscle. If you notice something about when you're exercising and you do abdominal work, or you see somebody do abdominal work, or you have a trainer prescribe to you abdominal work, they're going to usually use high repetitions. Rarely do you say, give me 5 crunches. Give me 5 leg lifts. You're rarely going to see that. You're rarely going to hear that. You're rarely going to do it. You're usually going to do high repetition exercises. Why? Well, it's a slow twitch muscle. It's what I call a dense muscle. And I've always described it to people as it takes a longer time under tension, we call it, longer time for the exercise to actually, quote unquote, penetrate the muscle. It's not really penetrating it. It just takes a little bit of time to fatigue it. Trying to get it to an actual failure takes some time. And if you were to try to do more of a low rep, high weight type of exercise, then you're going to risk injury. Before that muscle actually starts to become sore, in other words, tear slightly in a good way, break down, which is what we're trying to do through resistance training. Before it does that, if you're lifting heavy weight, you're going to pull it. It's sort of like stainless steel. Stainless steel will break before it bends. Your calf muscle, abdominal muscles, neck, forearms, they're more likely to develop an injury because of doing something too heavy for a short amount of time. I remember watching a particular individual working out. And in my career, one of my favorite things to do is to go into the gym and watch people work out. That's probably a sick fascination that I have. But I actually do it there's a good reason to do it. It's also it's how I pick up on what are some of the trends and what are some of the beliefs that are out there, because a lot of the beliefs that when clients walk in and talk to us, we have to deal with the belief system that's out there about certain exercise, and we have to dispel a lot of it. I've done a whole series on, in fact, it's one of the reasons I put together the podcast and the reason I do any kind of speaking engagements. And the name of one of my favorite speeches is Dispelling the Myths of Health, Fitness, and Nutrition. And I like to watch people do that. But I was watching this individual at a place where I was training years ago, back in 1995. And he's a really, really, really big guy. I'm not sure what all was involved there, but a very big guy. But he had these tiny calves. And I used to watch him go on the calf raise machine and just stack just ungodly amounts of weight. I remember that because the owner used to get so mad at him because he would never unload the machine. But he would stack 45 after 45 after 45 after 45. Every one that the pipe could hold. And then he would go do 4 or 5 repetitions. And what he was doing was, of course, he was trying to do heavy weight, low reps to penetrate that muscle. And all I could think is he's going to rip the calf muscle from the Achilles. If he keeps that up, he's never going to develop his calves. They're a dense muscle. They're slow twitch, so you're going to use a high repetition to penetrate this muscle. Now, this is why you see very nicely developed calves, even on a tiny gymnast. Even on the tiniest of gymnasts, you're going to find a developed calf muscle. Why? Well, 99.99999% of everything they do when their feet are on the ground, they're on the balls of their feet. They are taught to use their calves as springs. And they actually are. When you flex that foot and you get on the ball of your foot and you bounce on even not on a spring floor, you literally will bounce. That is, when you're seeing them bound in the air after a round off back handspring, whatever, and they're doing flip after flip after flip, or back full, where they're doing 2 flips and 2 full twists, or double full. They're getting so much height, not just because that spring floor. That spring floor is usually foam, and it does bounce you up some. You jump on one, you'll see. It's not trampoline. What is happening is they are hitting it with this strong, compacted muscle. They're hitting the ball of their foot, and that muscle is acting like a spring. It's extremely strong. It's made to handle that so that it doesn't damage the Achilles. That's why it has that dense makeup of the slow twitch muscle. That it's bringing them that high in the air. Basketball players have this. Anybody that does jumping, yes, but more or less bouncing on the ball of your feet. Boxers, the gymnast has said, dancers, especially any body in ballet who's on point. They definitely have incredibly developed calves due to just the need to have the strength there, and also the fact that it's high repetition. So what I'm getting to, high repetitions actually work that muscle. And so high repetition athletics, of course, you're going to have more developed calves. Sprinters have more developed calves. You see a sprinter versus an endurance runner. Now, typically a sprinter is going to be muscular. I remember, I'll never forget, back in, I believe it was the '88 Olympics. I'm not sure. The Ben Johnson, who's a Canadian sprinter, who tested positive for steroids, who was actually a fantastic sprinter. Sad thing that happened to him as far as that goes. But they showed that one of the things that was a clue to it is they showed his overdeveloped deltoid. But sprinters they're typically very, very, very strong. Even though Usain Bolt and even Carl Lewis did not look very bulky, they're very muscular. That's an anaerobic exercise, in other words, without oxygen. Where endurance, an aerobic exercise like doing a marathon, even though they're breathing hard, that is more with oxygen. You can run that pace for a longer time, which is why it's an endurance type activity. Now, why am I bringing this up when it comes to calf muscles? Well, a sprinter spends the majority of the time on their balls of their feet, just launching themselves, propelling themselves down the track. Where an endurance runner, they're not propelling themselves down the track, but they're going to do more midfoot striking. You used to do heel-toe striking. We've realized that that's very inefficient, and so now we do midfoot striking. But as opposed to midfoot striking, the sprinter and anybody that does a field event jumpers typically have well-developed calves too. They're going to be off, not just the midfoot. They're going to be on the ball of their foot. They're going to be up on, as we used to call it, up on your toes. Not really on your toes, but they're going to be more on the ball of their foot because they're doing it all out sprint, and they're doing it over and over and over and training that way. So therefore, they're doing high repetitions on those calf muscles, which is why they're developing the way they are. So if you're interested in developing the calf muscle, it's going to have to be a high repetition. It's going to be like abdominals. You're not going to do 4 of them. You're going to do 20, 25. You're going to take that muscle to full exhaustion. Now you can get it to a point in a short repetition where you are lifting so heavy you can't lift anymore, but that's not really complete exhaustion. And and that's why I call it penetrate the muscle. Before you really take that muscle through a slow, full exhaustion, you're probably going to rip something. And so that's why I keep beating this to death, is that the dangers of somebody popping their Achilles. That's not fun. If you've ever seen it, it is not a pretty sight. I was on the track when I actually heard one pop, and the calf muscle rolls up like a Venetian blind. It's something you don't want to see, and nor do you want to experience. So high repetitions, one of the best exercises for that, besides of course calf raises or whatever, jump rope. Doing jump rope for cardiovascular reasons, not for calf development. Do it for cardiovascular reasons. If you do it for calf development, you're going to have more of a tendency to think, okay, I'm going to do 3 sets of 3 minutes. If you're doing it for cardiovascular, you're going to have more of a tendency to go longer. Learn to shift your weight back and forth. Learn to really push the endurance in that muscle. And if you do that, you'll develop that calf. It may interest you. I hope it does. But the gastrocnemius and the soleus actually train differently. Now they do work. When the calf is firing, both gastrocnemius and soleus are involved. But when you really want to target one or the other, and I highly recommend targeting both. Don't just target the one that's on top that you see. It's the same thing we see in the bicep. Don't just target that gastrocnemius. Make sure you're targeting the soleus, because if you spend too much time on that gastrocnemius, even though the soleus is involved, you can create somewhat of an imbalance. Even though they don't oppose each other like a quadricep and a hamstring, you can create somewhat of an imbalance, and you can cause that soleus to pull if you're overtraining the gastrocnemius, and vice versa. But the way you work that gastrocnemius is you work your gastrocnemius more with your legs straight. But go back to the stretch I was talking about earlier. Hands are against the wall, and you're pushing your heel to the floor. Now bend your knee and try to push your heel to the floor. Remember I said, but when you do that, that actually stretches more the soleus. Well, when you're exercising, that's the case. If your legs are straight, you're going to work far more of the gastrocnemius. So like a standing calf raise, you're going to work a lot more gastrocnemius. Even a donkey calf raise, the true donkey calf raise, which is a bent over machine, and the pad is on your hips, and you're actually pressing it up and down. You're bent over like a donkey. We've called now the donkey calf machine the 45-degree calf machine, where you're actually almost in a sitting position. Your legs are somewhat in front of you, but those usually require a straight leg, and they're harder to do with a bent knee. And so you're going to work a lot more of the gastrocnemius than you are the soleus. But you want to cause that gastrocnemius to poke out a little more. You want to show some defined calves. Get on a seated calf machine. Don't 86 the straight-legged calf machine by any means, or straight-legged calf lifts by any means. But work some soleus work in there. Work some bent knee calf raises. And you can do that with a standing calf raise machine, but it's a bit difficult. You can even do it jumping rope. If you just bend your knees a little bit more, you'll actually work more of the soleus. But probably the best way to target that is going to be, also the 45-degree machine. I've had people do soleus work on that. But you're really going to target it with a seated a seated calf raise because your knees are fully bent. Knees are fully bent, and actually the stretch feels quite good too. Now, this happens to be personal preference. So please don't take offense to this. And if you're a trainer listening to this, please don't take offense to it. It happens to be a personal preference of mine. I'm not a big fan of using the leg press machine as a calf machine. Now, I'm going to step on a lot of toes when I say that, because a lot of people that do it as a rest between my leg presses and what have you, and I do calf raises. I do not recommend that, and it's and I'll tell you why. It's not that you can't work the calf. You can work the calf, but you're putting the calf, your Achilles, and your knees in such jeopardy by doing that. I mean, you're really taking a chance. I've seen this happen. Where an individual in the gym was actually setting up to actually got finished with a leg press, and then he was going to bring his feet down on the leg press machine in order to work his calves, where he was lifting an incredible amount of weight. His calves could handle it, but as far as handling it as in, I'm not sure you could do high repetitions with it, but his calves could definitely handle the weight together. But what he didn't realize was he was shifting as he was walking his feet down the leg press, the pad, in order to get his heels hanging off. He's shifting all that weight from one foot to the other foot. And once he got that heel, I think it was his left heel, clear of the bottom, and he started to put pressure to put that weight on the right heel, put the pressure on the left ball of the foot in order to bring the right heel down far enough. In other words, he was shifting weight in his right foot. He was bringing after the left foot had already cleared, and the heel was hanging off the leg press pad. As he was doing that, he shifted all the weight on the left calf. The quadricep, the glute were out of it because his heel was hanging off. And so he transferred all that weight over. When he transferred all that weight over, bam, he popped his Achilles. Because your body's not made to handle that. Yes, his calf could handle the weight, but he was just by trying to get in position, he popped his Achilles. The other thing that people do is they typically have a tendency as they get going to start to bounce the repetition a little bit. And even if you're not bouncing the repetition, it is very difficult to not put your knee in a locked knee position when you're doing calf raises on a leg press. Yes, it can be done, but don't take the chance. I mean, you may be getting those last couple repetitions. You're thinking about, oh, man, I'm getting, like Garrett said, I'm getting 20 repetitions on this. I got 18, 19. I'm going to get to 20, and that's all you're thinking about. And you're not thinking about where that knee is. You're not thinking about the position of that knee, and you're slightly hyperextending that knee. As the weight goes up and comes back down, you'll slightly extend that knee. Even slightly hyperextending it over an amount of time, you're going to develop problems in the knee. You're going to strain the ACL. You're going to strain the tendons, all the tendons around that knee, and the ligaments around that knee. You can actually damage the joint itself. And you can definitely do it if you're popping the weight up too high and you're coming down on a hyperextended knee. So there's so many other ways of working the calf muscle that I would stay away. As far as leg press is concerned, I'd stay away from that. And if you have to, do it on a sliding machine leg press. We've got a little more control. And bring the weight all the way down, set yourself up for it, and do controlled calf raises. Even though your heel does not go off a pad, it's okay. You're going up on the balls of your feet, and you're working the calf muscle. It's a little safer. But like I say, jump rope, calf raises on a straight leg calf raise machine, 45-degree calf machine. If you don't have those accessible to you, very easy. Take a dumbbell, hold on to a bar, balance yourself, in other words, on one foot. You can do it on a cable crossover machine. You have a myriad of things that you can hang on to. You can hold the back of an upright bench, and you can basically go up and down on one toe, holding the dumbbell in the same hand as the leg that you're working. So if I got the dumbbell in my right hand, I'm doing calf raises, single leg calf raises, with my right leg. Another way to do that, very simple. Sit down in a chair. Place some heavy dumbbells, or even a barbell, above your knee, not on your knee, of course, but just across the top, right on your thighs, a little towards the end, down towards the end, the knees. And you're going to create your own seated calf raise. Now, if you want to bring your feet up, you want to let your heels drop down a little farther, fine. Take a board or a 45-pound plate and put it on the floor where the balls of your feet can go on the plate and your heels can hang off. Now you're going to get a little more stretch in that Achilles. You're going to get some more depth. You're going to get some more range of motion out of that calf. And I'm a big fan of the range of motion. In fact, I use the seated calf raise machine and many times use the 45-degree calf machine to stretch people's calves, to get them to really stretch their calves. I'll tell them to let the heels go as far down as they possibly can. When they start and the pain gets so intense that they don't want to feel it anymore, press up on the balls of their feet like they're doing a calf raise and relieve the tension. Relieve the tension for a second. Actually, it feels better. Whew, you kind of get a relax. Even though you're flexing the muscle, you're getting a relaxation. And then go down and try to go a little bit deeper. Drop that heel down and start going a little bit deeper. What you're actually doing when you do that, you're doing what we've talked about in another podcast called PNF stretching. And it's a type of stretching that confuses the stretch reflex. The stretch reflex is the reflex that you have in your body where when you're starting to pull a muscle, before your body allows you to let it pull apart, it's going to start to contract the muscle like fighting back, which is going to cause a little bit of pain. It's trying to tell you stop it. Well, that stretch reflex has an interesting little brain. If you contract the muscle, then you're shortening the muscle. And so you're telling the stretch reflex, I'm not doing anything. I'm not stretching this. I'm not causing any problems here. Just no, nothing's going on at all. And then as soon as it relaxes, it's like the stretch reflex kind of goes back into its house or gets back up on the lifeguard stand and it's not worried about you anymore. Well, its response time kind of stinks. And so if you contract the muscle, contract it, let it go back into the lifeguard stand, let it go back into its little house. And then you relax, and I mean, when you relax, you push real deep into that stretch. You're going to gain, and when you're doing a hamstring this way, you're going to gain inches many times, but you're going to gain a lot more length. And what's going to happen is the muscle is going to be allowed to stretch a little deeper than the stretch reflex was allowing it earlier, and you'll get more of a stretch out of it. Now, I will tell you, once you settle into that stretch, at first it feels good. Then all of a sudden it starts to burn, and it starts to burn, and it starts to burn, and it starts to burn. What is happening is the stretch reflex has now come off the lifeguard stand, and it is starting to fight you. It's not because you're stretching deeper. It's because your muscle is starting to contract and fight back against you. Now, I've gone way off subject here to talk about PNF stretching. It's something I have to be a big fan of. But the reason I'm talking about stretching your calves and why that's so important is because many reasons. One is it's related to a lot of back pain. And so that you can actually relieve the tension in that muscle, which will quit pulling the hamstring, which will quit pulling the pelvis and quit causing back pain. Now, I teased you at the very beginning. I talked about the second heart. And that's what the calf muscle is referred to. And the main reason is that venous return, they call it the calf muscle pump. Venous return refers to oxygen-depleted blood returning to the heart from the legs and feet. Since the heart can't do this alone, venomuscular pumps in the lower body apply upward pressure on the veins and they keep it moving at an efficient pace and pretty much in the right direction. These pumps include what they call the ankle pump and the calf muscle pump, and they work together like this. The foot pump initiates venous return. This is the heart, the blood coming back towards your heart. This occurs each time you take a step. When your heel touches down, the blood is pulled in the veins. When the front of your foot touches down, the pulled blood is discharged upwards. You follow me? So when your front of your foot touches down, when you actually touch down the ground, the pulled blood is discharged, is pushed upwards. Now, discharged blood enters the veins in the soleus muscle. The muscle extends. This muscle is you know about that, what I was telling you about already, but it extends from the ankle to the back of the knee and contains critical veins responsible for for this venous return of this oxygen depleted blood going through the lower legs and to the knee. And this serves as the meeting point for veins in the lower leg, believe it or not, in the soleus. Each time this calf contracts, it applies pressure to the veins. That pressure is what fuels venous return. And just go ahead and follow it on up. The blood is transferred into the veins running between the knee and the groin. From there, it enters the abdominal cavity and travels through the vena cava, large vessel, to the heart. There's less resistance from gravity on the final leg of the trip. As it enters the mid part of your body or whatever, there's less resistance to gravity. But that's how, you're wondering how one pump of the heart can send blood all around your body. But that foot pump helps it travel back. And that's why the calf muscle is known as the second heart. Now, this is one of those things where whether you need to or not, I told you. But more importantly, it's a reason to work that small muscle. Don't just put it aside. I did legs today. I was on my feet. I must have worked the calves. Throw some reps in. Throw some sets in. Definitely throw a lot of reps in those sets. The calf muscle, the second heart. A lesson about that is just one more way we help you live your level of wellness. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.